has been interesting is how the constraints and the utility aspect have encouraged other people to be creative around the medium. So the 140 characters was actually a practical constraint. When we were designing the system, I had a $20 cell phone from Nokia, and it could only handle 160 characters at a time. So we were like, okay, we need to fit everything in 160 characters, but we also need an addressing mechanism, like this username here. So we allowed 15 characters for the username, and 5 characters for some space and for some punctuation, and we arrived at 140 characters. And what that allows us to do, from a practical standpoint, is that any cell phone in Kenya or in Iraq can use this service for free without breaking up into multiple messages and without being annoying. So the cultures and the usages that don't have access to the rich information that we are used to here, being the web and YouTube and all these other very rich experiences, anyone can participate in this medium, receiving and producing content with a $20 phone, and that was a huge aspect. Everything else you see in the service was invented by the users. This @ symbol, followed by a name, never came from the company, never came from me. Actually, the company was, it didn't really like it. We thought it was ugly, but people kept using it. So I took 2 hours and I looked for any @ symbol and then a name, and I made it link to a profile page. And that was the start of the whole @reply in our addressing. This hashtag that you see everywhere now was also invented by the users. It's not something that we ever planned for or ever did. It was something that the 140 character constraint inspired. How do we categorize them? How do we put more keywords around the content that I'm producing? RT, which is a massive system in Twitter today, which is retweet, which is basically just a rebroadcasting mechanism, was also invented by the users. Never came from the company. The company resisted it for a long time, and the hashtags, but eventually built them in and built some conveniences around them. So I think that's been one of our greatest lessons in building the system, is that we built this foundation, we built this utility, and people came to it and built their own products upon it, built their own experiences upon it. Whereas I would use it to talk about bison in San Francisco, and my mom found that amazingly useful, where 99.9% of the world doesn't. Other people would come to it and share links, or share promotions around their business, or predictions for the future, or pictures of a plane going down in the Hudson. It didn't really matter how one approached this. All that mattered was how people were making it relevant on the recipient side. And that's something that we have always, and still today, have had some issues with, is why is Twitter relevant to people? There's no one general answer for that question. A lot of people initially, and how I started this conversation, was that people saw it as, people are talking about, what they ate for the day. And that is interesting to some people, namely my mom, but it's not interesting to the majority of people. But no matter how you look at this system, you can always find some value, you can always derive something from it. And if you can't, then you create it. And that's what we found, not just in our users, but in our developer base and all of the commercial entities and governments that use it today. One of our first commercial entities, we always kind of thought that Twitter would be big for promotion and marketing and entities like this, but we didn't realize how big it would be or how soon it would come. The first one was JetBlue. JetBlue started using Twitter as promotion and talking about various fairs and what the company was doing. And then they started also using it for market research, which we found very interesting. Like they're actually watching people mention JetBlue and what they think of it. And then they did something really fascinating, which was they used it as customer service. So they saw a update, a tweet that said, I had a terrible flight with JetBlue. I'll never be using that airline again. And they would converse directly with this person and end up fixing the situation to create a happy customer, or give them something in some way that alleviated some of those issues. So that usage, again, is not something that we ever planned for, but this utility aspect allows for. So I think at this point, being that Twitter has defined where its users want to take it, I think this conversation should also go where we want to take it. So I want to open it up to questions and just have a discussion around your concerns with the technology, or desires, or where you think this is going.
Promoted tweets that launched yesterday, both for the professional side and also on the personal side.
Yeah, I mean,
Can you repeat the question so we can get it?
Yeah, so the question was, can you speak to the promoted tweets, which was announced yesterday by the company, and is actually being talked about in even more detail today at a conference, a developers conference that we're holding in San Francisco called Chirp. So that scenario that I laid out with JetBlue is the behavior that we saw again and again and again, not just with commercial entities, but with nonprofits, with governments, with individuals, with celebrity. You would always have these entities figure out like how people are using the system or using the brand, and then reach out to them to either fix the situation or encourage or promote certain feelings or entities around it. So the promoted tweets aspect of Twitter is just an extension of that and another convenience. Just like this became a convenience, and this became a feature and a convenience, and retweet became a feature and a convenience. This is an activity that people have wanted to see. The biggest issue with a lot of companies and them sending tweets today is they get lost in this stream of information. So how do we pull that important content out? And that's a lot of what the company is focused on today. If you go to search.twitter.com today, not only will you see the promoted tweets, but you also see the top tweets. You'll see the relevant tweets. So the company is focused on making all of the content, be it commercial or non-commercial, more relevant. And the promoted tweets specifically go after keywords and people searching right now. They may emerge or evolve into something different. But that focus is to really kind of expose what's happening right now. That's where the trending topics come in. And once you have those keywords and those trends, how can you deliver topical and relevant information to people? And in some cases that may be paid for. In some cases it might just be mass volume around certain events. Like right now, well, these are all hashtags, so you can't really see it. But if you go down the page a little bit, there might be an event that's happening right now that would show up in that list.